storm had come without warning, as storms often did on Cathera Prime. Captain Ilara Quinn stood at the edge of the crystalline ridge, her environmental suit's sensors screaming warnings she could no longer hear over the howling wind. Below her stretched a chasm so deep that the bottom disappeared into perpetual shadow, and behind her, the expedition team she had sworn to protect. 3 months. That was how long she had been stranded on this predator-infested world with 7 other humans and 24 Cathari, the apex predators of this planet who had, against all galactic precedent, chosen not to hunt them. The ridge cracked beneath her boots. Ilara's eyes met Varric's across the narrow path. The massive Cathari Alpha, his obsidian scales gleaming even in the storm's dim light, opened his mouth to roar a warning. But physics moved faster than sound. The crystalline formation shattered like glass and Captain Ilara Quinn plummeted into the abyss. She didn't scream. Screaming wasted oxygen, and Ilara Quinn had survived worse than falling. Her mind raced through calculations even as her body tumbled through the air. Suit integrity at 70%. Gravitational acceleration at 12 meters per second squared. Distance to impact approximately 900 meters. She had perhaps 8 seconds before the chasm floor ended her story. What she didn't calculate was what happened above. Varric moved before thought could temper instinct. The Cathari Alpha, who had led his pack for 17 cycles and never showed weakness, launched himself off the ridge without hesitation. His wings, designed for gliding, not true flight, snapped open, catching the violent updrafts that swirled through the chasm. Other Cathari followed, not because their alpha commanded it, but because something deeper than pack hierarchy compelled them. The human was falling, and they had to catch her. This made no sense to Varric's rational mind. Humans were soft-skinned bipeds with no natural weapons, no protective scales, no venom. They should have been prey. When the human ship had crashed 3 months ago, the pack should have fed well for weeks. Instead, Captain Ilara Quinn had walked into their territory, injured and alone, and spoke to them. Not with the telepathic frequencies most species used, but with sound and gesture and something else, something that bypassed language entirely. She had tended to wounded Cathari hatchlings caught in the debris field. She had shared her rations when her own people went hungry. She had stood between Varric and a rival alpha, her small body impossibly brave, and negotiated a peace that saved dozens of lives. She had earned something the Cathari didn't have a word for in their language. Humans called it loyalty. Varric folded his wings and dove, accelerating past the thermal currents. Below him, Ilara had spread her limbs wide, maximizing air resistance to slow her descent. Her environmental suit sparked and hissed where the chasm's crystalline walls had torn it. She was still calculating, still fighting, still refusing to surrender to gravity's inevitable conclusion. Stubborn. That was the word the other humans used for their captain. Varric had learned it meant something between foolish and magnificent. 200 meters to impact. Varric's wing membrane screamed in protest as he pushed beyond safe velocities. Other Cathari flanked him. Thesic, Morana, young Krell, who had barely survived his first hunt before Ilara taught him to set proper traps. They formed a living net, a diving constellation of scales and desperation. "I've got visual on the captain," the voice crackled through the emergency channel. Dr. Sarah Chen, the expedition's biologist, watching helplessly from the ridge above. "Oh God, they're all diving after her." 100 meters. Varric extended his claws, calculating intercept vectors with predatory precision. Ilara saw him coming. Their eyes met across the shrinking distance, and she did something that would puzzle Varric for the rest of his life. She smiled, not the grimace of terror he had seen on prey animals, but the genuine expression of trust that had first confused him months ago when she handed him medical supplies for his wounded packmate. The human was falling to her death, and she smiled at him. 50 meters. Varric spread his wings, catching Ilara against his chest with both forelimbs wrapped protectively around her torso. The impact drove the air from his lungs, but he held firm. Around them, other Cathari adjusted their trajectories, forming a cascade of living cushions. Thesic caught Varric's legs, slowing their combined descent. Morana grabbed Thesic. Young Krell, with his smaller frame, darted between them all, using the crystalline walls to redirect momentum. The pack fell together, a braided chain of predator and prey, predator and pack, each link absorbing impact and distributing force. They crashed through 3 layers of crystalline outcroppings, each one shattering their momentum further. Varric tucked his wings around Ilara, feeling his scales crack and his bones groan, but never loosening his grip. They hit the chasm floor in a tangle of limbs and wings and determination. For a long moment nothing moved except the settling dust and the distant howl of the storm above. Then Alara coughed. "Status report," she wheezed, her voice muffled against Varric's chest. "Who's injured?" The Alpha Kithari made a sound halfway between a laugh and a growl. Of course, the humans' first concern was for them. That was why they had dove. "We live," Varric rumbled, carefully unwrapping his limbs from around her. "You, 3 cracked ribs, possible concussion, suit breach on the left thigh." Ilara inventoried her injuries with clinical precision as she sat up, already reaching for the emergency medical kit on her belt. "Nothing fatal, you." Varric looked at his pack. Scales torn, wings damaged, pride wounded by the sheer irrationality of what they had just done. Then he looked at Alara, already preparing to treat their injuries before her own, and understood something that would reshape his species' relationship with humanity forever. They had not caught her because she was falling. They had caught her because she had already caught them, in treaties and trust, in shared meals and mutual protection, in the invisible bonds that turned strangers into pack. "We are pack," Varric said simply, using the human word because his language lacked the proper term. Pack protects pack. Above them the storm raged. Around them the chasm's shadows pressed close. But Captain Alara Quinn smiled that impossible smile again, and the apex predators of Cathara Prime knew, with absolute certainty, that they would dive after her 1,000 times more. Because that was what pack did. And humans, these strange soft-skinned bipeds with their stubborn hearts and contagious loyalty, had taught them what it truly meant to be pack.